I hope you all are feeling good and proud of yourselves because you should. It's been a rough one. I am so excited today because I get to talk with Rachel Lark, who has a new EP out today called Sex and Balances, which is kind of indicative of the style of music she plays. It's all very, very funny music. But before I jump into it with Rachel, I just want to let you guys know that at towerrecords.com, yes, it is back up and running, and there are over 500,000 titles, and that's CDs, tapes, and vinyls that you can get your hands on because who isn't buying music these days to cope? I know I am. It's also the only place you can get your official Tower Records merch, so check it out. I think I see Rachel in the comments, so let's see. Always, guys, leave us comments and questions in the chat, and we will try to answer them if we can. We love to hear from you guys.
Hello.
Hey, Rachel.
How's it going?
Good. How are you? I love your lipstick.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such a treat to wear it. You know, I'm inside and I'm wearing lipstick and I'm not wearing a mask. It's quite a pleasure.
I bought a bunch of lipstick recently before I realized, oh, I'm wearing a mask everywhere. Why would I do this to my wallet?
Yeah, like we're in an eye moment. I think we might start to see more like sort of forehead looks really sort of like coming into the zeitgeist. Lipstick, not so much these days. But
yeah, for real. So you're up in Oakland, right? How has
yes.
it been up there? Is the air quality any better?
It is. My like favorite form of exercise and relaxing is going on trail runs, and there's like all of these just incredible nature in the East Bay, and so it was hard to like not be able to go outside for a while, obviously for all of us. But yesterday I went on a trail run, and it was like the clearest I've seen the mountains in, I don't know, a couple months. So yeah, so that was nice.
I'm from the Bay originally. I'm from San Jose, and so
Okay,
I've been hearing from my family the daily check-ins on whether it's cool to be outside or not. So I'm happy things are clearing up a little bit.
Yeah, totally. How is it? You're in LA, right?
Yes.
Yeah, how is it over there?
Still on fire. The air quality's it's not bad today. It's blue skies, but it's everything is metaphorically and in California physically on fire. So we're coping.
I hear ya.
Well, congratulations on the new EP. It's fantastic. I'm so excited to talk with you about it. And that came out today, correct?
Correct. Today.
Amazing. I know that you had 2 songs out already, but how has the reception been so far? How have you gotten good feedback? Are people loving it?
Yeah, it's been really good. You know, it's the 2 songs that we released. The first one is called The Unicorn Song, which is like a sort of very irreverent, sort of silly, it's very sparkly music video with like lots of colors. And we shot the music video the last weekend of February, like right before, you know, everything locked down. And it's a song about like polyamory and about you know, sort of connecting with a lot of people, and there were like tons of people in the shoot. And then the last song on the EP is called The World's Really Fucked, but the show will be pretty good. And that video we shot, you know, sort of during COVID. So the 2 songs that were released were kind of this odd kind of bookend to this whole era that we're living in. And you know, I think the first song we released, the Unicorn Song, was like this just sort of sparkly, escapist, delightful thing for people to watch. And you know, I think people really enjoyed having something to kind of take their mind off of stuff. And so we got a lot of positive feedback for that. People found it, you know, just really charming and fun. And then The World's Really Fucked, but the show will be pretty good was really it hit more emotionally than we expected. Like my music's always kind of got a little bit of tongue-in-cheek kind of comedy to it, but it's often got this like sort of real political kind of truth to it, I guess. And I was surprised that a lot of people reacted with just like a lot of emotion when they saw my later music video. And you know, it really is a song about fighting existential dread and trying to find the strength to still make art and participate politically, even when it seems like there's no way out of this. So people, I think, found it extremely cathartic and inspiring, and that is like you know, just the most I could ever hope for as an artist.
Good. I have so many questions about the music videos and about all of these songs, really. But let's talk really quickly about the two other songs that came out just today.
Yeah. So, oh gosh. So Do You Wanna is, I actually wrote that song. That's the second track on the EP during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. And
I might have guessed.
yeah, and unfortunately, there is a whole verse about the Supreme Court, and I think it's going to hit a little differently now with the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So it was really, honestly, I often write my songs with a sort of idea about what it's going to feel like to perform them on stage. Like on stage is where I get to sort of feel my big feelings and have some kind of emotional catharsis. And I wanted to write a song where I could just like scream for a long time about how upsetting it is to be a woman in this world, in this administration, you know, be watching as presidential candidates who are known rapists take over our country. And so I wrote like probably the angstiest, most sort of hardcore, distorted song I've ever written. And of course, it being released today, I think it's going to take on a whole new meaning with what's happening with the Supreme Court right now. And then again, it's a weird thing about this EP. Like the songs sort of just feel more relevant, even though I wrote them a few years ago. But
Oh, wow. Really?
yeah.
That's been something that's been kind of a theme lately is many musicians that have released albums this year, a lot of the songs became a little more pertinent in ways that
Yeah.
we didn't expect. And I guess that can be chalked up to these things have been brewing for quite a long time.
I mean, I think that's it, right? It's like, I mean, I remember in 2016 when everyone was like, oh, 2016 is like the worst year. Like, this is the worst year. What a horrible year. And I remember at the time sort of being like, you guys, the worst year isn't when the fascist gets elected. Like, that's just the beginning. And so I do think like that's part of it. Like we've been picking up, you know, artists can't help but sort of pick up on these fears, and the fears are coming to fruition. So I think that is like a very big part of it. But my third track on the EP is called This Year, and I did write it in 2016 when I was supposed to play a festival. I think it was a week after the election. And I played my like main set, but I was also supposed to play a sunrise set. And sunrise sets to me are always like extremely vital emotionally. You know, if people have been like up all night, and then the sunrise is really the time where you're going to kind of bookend the whole evening, and things could either go sort of like stressful south, like, oh, I need sleep, and I'm mad at my friend that ditched me, and I'm like can't find my stuff. Or it could be sort of like, wow, I feel so connected to humanity, and I'm happy that I came out all this way, and everything's going to be great from here on out. And I believe that what songs you hear at sunrise determine whether it's like one or the other.
I love that.
Yeah. And I missed my sunrise set because I was like crying about the election too hard. And so I a few days later wrote a song about like the sunrise and this missed opportunity to kind of like help usher everybody into some kind of positive place after this night of dancing and music. And that's how I wrote This Year. But again, like there have been these moments since then that it feels like the song is more relevant for. And this year feels real rough. So I think that, you know, folks are going to find, especially the second, third, and fourth songs on this album, like a quite like pointed relevance for the moment we're living in now.
Yes, I think in particular because I was watching the music video for The World's Pretty Fucked Up, but the show's going to be pretty good. I love the contrast of the sort of childish, the choir and the toy piano and the ukulele. It's all very, very innocent sounding, and it's such a wonderful contrast to everything that's being talked about. I mean, you cover really a lot of topics: the patriarchy, corporate greed, COVID. Like it's kind of everything is happening all at once. Or maybe we're just paying more attention now because we're stuck at home. And it made me want to ask you, first of all, when did you write this song?
I wrote it, I believe. Okay, now I remember when I wrote it. I wrote it in 2018.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was organizing a fundraiser show in San Francisco at the DNA Lounge, and the show was called the Confrontational Cabaret, and we were it was all political acts, and we were raising money for a bunch of different local organizations. And usually when I do like a cabaret show, I hire an MC, but I wanted to like host the show, and I didn't know how to open up the evening, you know, a sort of like, hey folks, welcome. Like I just hadn't like done that. And so I decided, I was like, I should just write a song to like open up the evening.
Love it.
And I was like, all I really want to say is like the world's really fucked, but the show will be pretty good. And so I opened the night by singing that song. And then after that, it became like a very requested song. And so I was like, okay, I should just play this as a normal part of the repertoire.
And it's taken on kind of a new meaning, I imagine, because now we're just kind of watching shit burn. And I know that for myself and certainly a lot of my friends and family, it kind of has this feeling of helplessness because so many things are happening all at once. And, you know, if you doom scroll for too long, then your day is just fucked. And so it's like, how do we stop it? And that's why I love the music video so much, because it is, like you said, shot in the time of COVID. Everybody's got their masks on. I love when the two people are kissing with their masks on. So, so funny to me. And I'm curious if you have a take on why you think this year is so important for people to be paying attention to what's happening and why things kind of feel like they've ramped up so much.
It's a great question. I think that, you know, it's important to note that there are communities in the United States and around the world that maybe are not feeling like it's ramped up a lot. They've been going through crisis after crisis for a long time. You know, something that definitely occurred to me when COVID hit, and I was like, oh my gosh, what if there was an earthquake right now too? Like, what if we had crisis upon crisis? And then I thought, well, that happened in Haiti 4 years ago. You know, they had the cholera epidemic and then an earthquake. So I do think that it's important for us to humble ourselves a little bit as like people in the United States and remember that there are people for whom life has been one crisis after another for a very long time, often because of the policies of our government. Mm-hmm. And it's only now sort of starting to really the sort of vast, widespread implications of our policies are starting to like really catch up with us as a relatively privileged nation. And I say that also knowing that we're a nation that has the highest income inequality of any developed nation. So of course, like communities are struggling hard in our country as well. But that said, there is something special about this year. I mean, what a horrible irony that human beings were able to understand what they were doing to the planet with only about a couple decades of time to reverse course. You know, like that sucks. That's not fair. Like, that's not cool. And yet that's what happened, right? Like we've known what we're doing to the planet. We've known what humans need in terms of access to healthcare that would be able to keep a global pandemic like this under control. Like we've known these things for a little while. And yes, it'd be nice if we had like 100 years to solve these problems, but we don't. And instead of solving them, we're actually just doubling down and like making these things worse. And so I think that like right now we are at this critical moment where, first of all, young people who have, grown up with a knowledge of all of these global problems are starting to really find their voice and like push for solutions in a really big way. And it's up to folks that are like a little older and maybe a little more jaded to, follow their lead and like really realize that like change is possible. It's
Mhm.
hard, but it's possible. um and like, I mean, if the United States has another 4 years of Trump, the implications can't be overstated. I mean, as much as we suffer from like some delusions of like we're the best country on earth, we're the most important country on earth, what our country does sets a standard all over the globe, and we have a sort of stronghold of corporate power and military power all over the world. So this election affects everyone, like the entire planet. So it's crucial that like we don't get checked out, that we don't get burnt out, and that we just do something, you
Yeah.
know?
That is something that I personally really struggle with is the feeling behind being burnt out, the feeling behind not wanting to doom scroll anymore. And I'm curious for you personally,
Yeah.
how do you cope with that? And what do you do to feel better when that kind of exhaustion sets in? Because a lot of these things kind of feel like they are too big to undo a lot of the time.
Yeah, yeah. I think fighting despair is something that artists should consider to be their job. And I think that, if you're someone with a microphone, with the ability to help guide people's emotions, then you should consider fighting despair like your like number one sort of task as an artist. So I think, finding art that inspires you, that makes you feel more connected to your fellow humans and less depressed about humanity is a good self-care practice. As for me personally and how I engage with the news, and first of all, I really try not to sort of doom scroll. I have a couple news outlets that I really trust, and I listen to Democracy Now, which is a great outlet every morning while I'm making my coffee. That gives me a nice sort of overview about like what's happening. Um, and then I've got like, I try to read actual articles rather than sort of just a sweep of headlines. I think that that can be a little more digestible. And then I try to make sure that I'm just participating either with volunteering or giving money in some way every day.
I
Something.
understand that you've been linked up with a an organization that helps ICE detainees. Can you speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, so in 2017, when the news broke about family separation and ICE detention, I kind of uh, sort of hit a level of, you know, shock and horror, and I speak Spanish, and there was a call for like Spanish speakers to go to Tijuana and you know basically try to keep people from getting detained in the first place and accompany people across the border. So that's what I did, and I ended up getting linked up with an organization called Al Otro Lado, which means to the other side. They do legal clinics in Tijuana to basically help potential asylees understand um, like what their rights are as soon as they're in ICE and how the process is going to go. And then that led me to sponsor someone. I met someone in Tijuana named Eduardo, who was from Chiapas. He'd been like basically running for his life for 4 years, and I ended up agreeing to sponsor him. And something that a lot of people don't know is that, I think I had this idea of like, oh, the people in ICE maybe don't deserve to be there, or the different, the treatment that they get is unfair. But like, they did some kind of illegal thing, like they crossed illegally or like something illegal happened, but that's actually not the case. Everybody that crosses, even at the specified checkpoints, even following all laws for how to declare themselves seeking asylum, get detained. And then
I
they're
did not
not,
know that. Wow.
yeah, a lot of people don't know that. And then they're not actually able to get released until someone who is a US citizen agrees to sponsor them.
Mm.
So they're stuck in jail having done, you know, nothing wrong in these horrible conditions that we've all heard about, unless a US citizen says, I will sponsor this person, I will help get them out, I, you know, will support them and make sure they make it to their legal appointments. So I ended up sponsoring someone. I live in a group house with 6 people, but he lived with us for 9 months and was granted asylum, which is really exciting. He's now here legally. He's actually canvassing in Arizona right now,
Cool.
in Spanish-speaking communities for the election. And then I ended up getting swept up in this work of like basically placing individuals and families with sponsors and educating people about how to help in this process.
Mm. Wow. I mean, it's so nice to hear from someone whose actions matches their words, because I feel like people, it's really easy to send out a tweet and it's easy to, you know, talk about things. So it's really admirable that you do that. And holy shit, that's insane. I want to switch gears for a moment because
Sure.
I was so curious about that. But the Unicorn song is, I think, my favorite song
Yeah.
on this album. It's so deeply funny, and the music video is really really great and colorful, like you said. And it just, I'm a huge drag fan as well, and
Nice.
so I really loved it. And I'm curious, what made you want to write a song about finding a perfect third from a male perspective?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, I think so for anybody who's ever, for any woman, especially who's ever been on a dating app, I think that the quest to be some couple's like perfect third unicorn has been dangled in front of them as a possibility. And I've always just thought it was hilarious. Like I've been sort of exploring non-monogamy in different ways since probably college, and there's a lot of books about it. It takes a lot of work and communication, and you know, it's not just sort of this idea that like, oh, I know what would be great. We just find this perfect person that is this perfect puzzle piece to what we've already got going on, and then it's great, you know, like and so as I like spoke to more women who have been you know, solicited or like invited to join a couple, I just kept on thinking about how hilarious it was that so many couples, especially the guy in the relationship, think that this is just going to be this like simple process, when really, when you think about the dating dynamics between 3 people, it's like pretty complicated. Like you've got the dynamic between each person individually, and then the other person individually, and then the whole dynamic of the 3 people, and then you have to figure out how do you split up your time and how do you not like ignore the other person. Like it's actually one of the more complicated dating configurations that one could do. And so I just actually, I think the prompt for writing it came from a festival that I was a part of where unicorns were a big theme there, and they meant it just sort of as like the funny magical creatures, but I know it from the sort of like dating context of finding the unicorn. And so yeah, I didn't think I had that many feelings about it, and then when I started writing, I was like, oh, there's some years of resentment bottled up in there.
It's really really funny. I particularly love the part of I've seen it on TV, so it must work. It's such a perfect roast of that kind of dude. And
Yeah,
anybody watching in the comments, there's an app called Thrinder. Go there instead.
yeah,
Don't harass ladies on OkCupid or wherever else.
totally.
um And let's talk about the music video because it's great. And I understand that your music videos are in part produced by your Patreon supporters.
Yeah.
So I am so interested in hearing your experience with Patreon, and also like what the timeline is of that, because I know that many artists and musicians in particular are more and more going to Patreon, and I love it so much. It's such a way to sort of reclaim your autonomy as an artist, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I produce all my music videos completely with my Patreon community. That's how I fund everything that I do. I am so grateful to them. It's like such an incredible, not only like vote of confidence, but also kind of a mandate. Like sometimes you can feel really sort of like, what should I do with myself when you're an independent artist? And when you know these people are like, hey, I'm supporting you financially, I want you to make stuff, it's a great sort of like morale booster to say like, I need to make stuff, you know?
Yes.
Um, yeah, I the first music video I ever produced was in 2013, I believe, and I did a Kickstarter for it. And so I've always known that I need to sort of like crowdfund. I'm such a sort of, I don't know, I'm a weird artist for a lot of like stages and venues, and a lot of people don't really understand what I'm doing. So I always knew I had to kind of find this like sort of grassroots underground audience myself and kind of create that world. And so I self-produce most of my events. I self-produce my music videos and my albums. I release them independently. I did like a few different Kickstarter campaigns that each were like bigger and bigger and more ambitious. And I, you know, for any like artists that might be listening to this or thinking about Patreon, it is something I recommend that people do, is to start with an initial sort of one project crowdfunding campaign, because then you build the trust
Mm.
with people where they're like, okay, cool. Like she wants to do this thing. I'm going to give her money. And then look, we got the thing and she did great. And now I'm like literally invested. And so I think that it's because I was sort of like growing this Kickstarter thing for a while, that when I was ready to say, all right, everybody, you know what? I'm not even going to tell you what project I'm going to do this year because I've got so many things I want to do. Just support me monthly and you'll keep getting content. And then I was able to sort of make that shift. And you know, it's only right now it's 370 people support me on Patreon, but that's enough to fund everything that I want to do, you know? So that's a pretty incredible platform.
Yeah, that's incredible. And uh, it's easy to me, it's easy to scroll on Instagram and you kind of forget that there are people on that side. So 370 people is not an insignificant amount
Right.
of fans to have, and that's so amazing. I also read that you have a podcast that you're working on and a rock musical. Can you tell me about those?
Yeah. So the podcast is we're going to drop our first episode on October 12th. It's called What's the Point? And it's conversations about the relationship between art and activism and how different artists, you know, kind of the conversation we're having earlier, how they fight despair, how they feel connected, where they feel the social change happens and is possible in the work that they do. So it's, you know, it's an interview style podcast. We talk to a lot of really incredible people, dancers, professors, musicians. I'm really excited about it, and it's been a really cool project to work on during this time where I'm like having all of these thoughts about
Yeah.
those topics. And then my musical is called Coming Soon. Um, Layers of irony with that with that title now. I've been working on it for 4 years, and it was supposed to make its San Francisco debut this February.
Mm.
Of course, with theater closing for the time being, we have sort of put the actual live production on hold. But in the meantime, I went into the studio and I recorded a concept album based on the musical. So we've just completed tracking on that. I'm working with a mixing engineer now, and
Cool.
I think that's going to be ready for release in like November.
Incredible. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And tell just I know the log line, but can you share that for our watchers?
The log line.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, like the little spiel about the musical.
Yeah.
Got it. I haven't heard that term before. The log line, yeah. Yeah, so it's the story of one millennial woman's quest for sexual satisfaction as she tackles patriarchy, explores kink, and fights with her boyfriend.
Incredible. I love it. I can't wait for this. And that reminds me of something I wanted to ask you. So much of your music is like so tied with comedy. And I'm curious, which came first for you? Were you a musician first, or did you have interest in doing stand up first? How did that bridge come together?
Totally. I was definitely a musician first. I never thought of myself as a comedy artist. I was very serious. I was like, you know, I write songs about love and loss and hard things, and I use complicated time signatures, and I practice my instrument, and I am like serious musician person. That was very much my identity. And then a really incredible show that folks should check out called Body Storytelling, BAWDY. It's a storytelling show about sex, gender, and kink. And they asked me to come perform a song for their show. They'd had a cancellation. This was like so random. They'd had a musical act cancel, and someone had recommended me for some reason. And they reached out to me and they were like, "Do you have any songs about sex?" And I was like, "No." Like I have songs about like love and boys and like breakups, but no songs about sex, except this one like joke song that isn't serious that I'd never perform. And they were like, "Play that one." And I went to the show, and it was an audience of like 400 people, which I wasn't expecting. I thought it was going to be like a little cafe. I was like, a couple dozen people. It was a huge, huge room. And I played this like joke song that I'd never performed before called Fuck My Toe. And it killed, and like everybody loved it, and I was like, okay, maybe I should try to write more stuff like this. But at first I really thought it was just going to be a little like side hobby aspect of what I did, like not the whole thing. And so I started writing custom songs for this storytelling show and performing for them every month. And that's when I started developing this like repertoire of funny songs about sex and gender, and then that kind of stuck, and it just became like what I was known for. And then I found myself on comedy stages, and I was like, am I a comedian? It took me a second to sort of think about like, what I was doing, because it didn't seem like there was quite like a word for it. Like all the comedy music that I had known seemed to be like firmly in the world of comedy. And I really felt more like, well, but I'm not just like trying to get a laugh necessarily. And so I always felt a little weird on stand-up stages. So I actually think now that I've sort of started exploring musical theater, I feel like I finally kind of found my place, because that's a realm where you can do both. You can make people laugh and
Yeah.
you can make people cry. And that's sort of, I like to play with the dichotomy.
I love that, and I think that that is such a beautiful insight for artists. To me, a big problem if you're an artist is you think of yourself in a certain way, and you
Yeah.
can tend to box yourself in. And so, what a wonderful gift that was to sort of go down that path and discover these abilities that you have to talk about serious things in the context of a funny song. I really love that. Salon has called you the poster girl for period sex. How do
Yes.
you feel about that title?
I wear it like a cape. Um, yeah, I was really surprised to see that that was the headline of that article, but also like quite proud. I that was in regards to my first music video, which is called Warm, Bloody, and Tender. It's also the first like song that I wrote for the storytelling show that I was telling you about. And the video's pretty bloody. So I think I think I earned the title. Yeah.
Nailed it. It's so badass. I love it. I just have a couple questions for you before we end our conversation. And you've been such a magnificent guest. Thank you for spending time with me
Thank
today.
you.
I know that you mentioned at the top of our conversation that you really create songs with the idea of performing them live. And so I'm curious, in this year when concerts have been off the table, have you explored live streaming? Have you been looking into any other options in how to get sort of the live experience out there to your listeners?
I've been thinking about it a lot. I did do some live streams early on when lockdown started, and I found that I hated the experience. And and I sort of reached out first to my Patreon community because they're the ones that, I are really sort of in the like driver's seat with me. And I like to keep them really updated and explain my process. Um, I sort of said, you know what, guys, I just don't want to do this live stream thing. Um, Part of the reason I didn't want to do it is I feel like my music, even though it's funny, it can touch on some really challenging content. And I believe in the container of a live show to sort of take care of people as they explore these like heavy topics. And I don't believe that's possible if you're like watching the show while you're cooking breakfast, So I sort of made this decision, like, I'm not going to do live streams anymore. However, I sort of said, like, my promise to you is I'm going to release a lot of content, like, lots of recorded music, lots of, my podcast is coming out, lots of music videos. I'm just going to give you a lot to sink your teeth into. It's just not going to be the live stream thing. I just haven't seen it work in a way that approximates the emotional experience of actually seeing a band live. That said, I have been thinking about a few different options. One idea is drive-in shows. I've started to explore how to do drive-in shows, which seems pretty safe to me. We're learning more about how COVID is transmitted, but it does sort of seem like outdoors with masks and distance is relatively safe. So I could explore, I could see maybe doing some just outdoor shows with like smaller audiences. Another thing I'm thinking about doing is creating sort of roving like site-specific audio drama that people sort of listen to while they walk through a space that'll at least be like they go out into the world to experience it, even though I'm not there. I think that could be really cool. So
I like that idea. That's so cool.
Yeah, so those are some ideas, and I'm thinking about it a lot because I just, some artists love being in the studio. I'm one of those people that loves being on stage. That's like what drives me, and so it's hard to not be able to experience that connection with audiences. But I'm thinking every day creatively about like how do we give people that experience.
I love that. And I really have been enjoying hearing how each artist has figured out, the creativity within confines and sort of figuring out what works for them. We all, I think I speak for all of the viewers when I say we're excited to see what you come up with. Here at Tower Records, we have a saying that is no music, no life. And I would love to know what that means to you.
Gosh, I don't know how I could survive without music. From like my earliest memories, I was writing songs to figure out how I felt about something. I'm constantly puzzled when people don't have the outlet of songwriting to feel things. I'm like, how do you know how you feel until you write a song about it? So, I think that, no matter how the industry changes, no matter how the platforms change that we engage with music, like music has been with us always. Probably as long as we've been talking, we've been making music. And I know that music is going to find a way to survive because it has to, because that's how humans engage with their emotions.
Yeah, I love that. Rachel, you are such a badass. Thank you for coming on and talking with me today.
My
And
pleasure.
stay safe.
Yeah,
keep
you
doing
too.
what you're doing.
Thanks, you too. Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye.
What an awesome person. You guys listen to the new EP. It's out today, Sex and Balances. And as always, check out towerrecords.com for all of your vinyls, CDs, and tape needs, as well as your official Tower Records merch. Coming up at 1 o'clock is Danny Pincus with the band Dream Phases, so don't miss it.